painted upon the creamy parchment, saints and angels, the Blessed Virgin with the golden aureole about her head, good Saint Joseph, the three kings, the simple shepherds kneeling in the fields, while angels with glories about their brow called to the poor peasants from the blue sky above. But most beautiful of all was the picture of the Christ-child, lying in the manger, with the mild-eyed kine gazing at him. Sometimes the old abbot would unlock the iron-bound chest where these treasures lay hidden, and carefully and lovingly brushing the few grains of dust from them, would lay them upon the table beside the oriel window in front of his little namesake, allowing the little boy freedom to turn the leaves as he chose. Always it was one picture that little Otto sought, the Christ-child in the manger, with the Virgin, Saint Joseph, the shepherds, and the kine, and as he would hang, breathlessly gazing and gazing upon it, the old abbot would sit, watching him, with a faint, half-sad smile flickering around his thin lips and his pale, narrow face. It was a pleasant, peaceful life. But by and by the end came. Otto was now nearly 12 years old. One bright, clear day, near the hour of noon, little Otto heard the porter's bell sounding below in the courtyard. Dong, dong. Brother Emmanuel had been appointed as the boy's instructor, and just then Otto was conning his lessons in the good monk's cell. Nevertheless, at the sound of the bell he pricked up his ears and listened, for a visitor was a strange matter in that out-of-the-way place, and he wondered who it could be. So while his wits wandered, his lessons lagged. Postera fueba lustrabat lampade terras, continued Brother Emmanuel, inexorably running his horny finger-nail beneath the line, human temque aurora polo dimoverat umbram. The lesson dragged on. Just then a sandaled footstep sounded without, in the stone corridor, and a light tap fell upon Brother Emmanuel's door. It was Brother Ignatius, and the abbot wished little Otto to come to the refectory. As they crossed the courtyard, Otto stared to see a group of mail-clad men-at-arms, some sitting upon their horses, some standing by the saddle-bow. "Yonder's the young baron," he heard one of them say in a gruff voice, and thereupon all turned and stared at him. A stranger was in the refectory, standing beside the good old abbot, while food and wine were being brought and set upon the table for his refreshment. A great, tall, broad-shouldered man, beside whom the abbot looked thinner and slighter than ever. The stranger was clad all in polished and gleaming armor, of plate and chain, over which was drawn a loose robe of gray woolen stuff, reaching to the knees and bound about the waist by a broad leathern sword belt. Upon his arm he carried a great helmet which he had just removed from his head. His face was weather-beaten and rugged, and on lip and chin was a wiry, bristling beard, once red, now frosted with white. Brother Ignatius had bidden Otto to enter, and had closed the door behind him, and now, as the lad walked slowly up the long room, he gazed with round, wondering blue eyes at the stranger. "Dost thou know who I am, Otto?" said the mail-clad knight, in a deep, growling voice. "Methinks you are my father, sir," said Otto. "Aye, thou art right," said Baron Conrad, "and I am glad to see that these milk-churning monks have not allowed thee to forget me, and who thou art thyself." "An it please you," said Otto, "no one churneth milk here but Brother Fritz. We be makers of wine, and not makers of butter, at St. Michaelsburg." Baron Conrad broke into a great loud laugh, but Abbot Otto's sad and thoughtful face lit up with no shadow of an answering smile. "Conrad," said he, turning to the other. "Again, let me urge thee, do not take the child hence. His life can never be your life, for he's not fitted for it. I had thought," said he, after a moment's pause, "I had thought that thou hadst meant to consecrate him, this motherless one, to the care of the universal Mother Church."
"So," said the Baron, "thou hadst thought that, hadst thou? Thou hadst thought that I had intended to deliver over this boy, the last of the Wulfs, to the arms of the Church? What then was to become of our name and the glory of our race if it was to end with him in a monastery? No, Drachenhausen is the home of the Wulfs, and there the last of the race shall live as his sires have lived before him, holding to his rights by the power and the might of his right hand."
The abbot turned and looked at the boy, who was gaping in simple, wide-eyed wonderment from one to the other as they spoke. "And dost thou think, Conrad," said the old man, in his gentle, patient voice, "that that poor child can maintain his rights by the strength of his right hand?" The Baron's look followed the abbot's, and he said nothing. In the few seconds of silence that followed, little Otto, in his simple mind, was wondering what all this talk portended. Why had his father come hither to St. Michaelsburg, lighting up the dim silence of the monastery with the flash and ring of his polished armor? Why had he talked about churning butter but now, when all the world knew that the monks of St. Michaelsburg made wine? It was Baron Conrad's deep voice that broke the little pause of silence.
"If you've made a milkmaid of the boy," he burst out at last, "I thank the dear heaven that there's yet time to undo your work, and to make a man of him."
The abbot sighed. "The child is yours, Conrad," said he. "The will of the blessed saints be done. Mayhap if he goes to dwell at Drachenhausen, he may make you the better, instead of you making him the worse." Then light came to the darkness of little Otto's wonderment. He saw what all this talk meant, and why his father had come hither. He was to leave the happy, sunny silence of the dear White Cross, and to go out into that great world that he had so often looked down upon from the high, windy belfry on the steep hillside. End of chapter 5.